Sup, dudes?
Man,
What up?
what's
What
up?
up? Hey, I'm just glad to be back on the Kinetic Texas Man podcast. That's right. That's right. This our recent line of guests have all been from Texas. I think there's a ploy here afoot that Stu, being a Texas boy, it's only Texas people. No, all joking aside,
Yeah,
I
there's just a lot of good humans in Texas,
I was gonna
man.
say
Agreed.
there's a lot going on in Texas. There's a lot of incredible conversations we've had with amazing dudes and dudettes from Texas. So
Yeah.
today will be no exception.
Do you want to go ahead and like give us your like Texas accent, like saying that you think everybody in Texas
No,
says?
man, it's just all you guys say, y'all. All y'all say
It's
y'all, and
y'all. It's really the y'all. And
it's
I
the y'all and the up dub double chuck barbecue grill. You know what I mean? Up dub double
yeah.
chuck.
Yeah. I've never heard anyone in Texas
Yes, you
say
have. Yes, you
up
have.
double chuck barbecue
Barbecue grill.
grill.
Like
Yeah, no,
that is.
I'm with you actually, Stu, on that. I've never heard that either. It sounds like something somebody from Texas would say, but
There you go.
I don't know.
No,
The
there you go.
y'all is there for sure. So
No,
it sounds like Southern Alabama or something like
nah,
that, or
man.
like Georgia or
Texas. It's Texas.
I've probably got a mix of, Texas and hood, maybe. I
Yeah.
don't know. Like I'm sure I carried on some hood from my past and, you
Uh,
know,
Uh,
ghetto. I stay pretty casual. There's some dudes and mans in there and,
there's a lot
yeah,
of dudes for me. I'll throw that out there right
yeah.
now. There's a lot of dudes, and
I don't mind. It's more relatable, I guess
yeah,
that's relative, but I'm not going to change me. I'm going to stay that way and stay laid back and even if I was making billions of dollars, I'm still going to say dude and
still
man.
gonna
I
be
don't,
you. Still gonna be you.
That's right. Still going to be
That's
me,
right.
man. Yeah, that's it.
Well, dude,
Let's get into
there you
it.
go,
There
dude.
it is. Now we'll
There you
catch
go,
every
dude.
one of them.
That's right.
Well, yeah, man. So you wrote a book and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And but let's dive in. Let's get to your backstory. Yes, Who sir.
Yeah.
is Cory Losier? And let's dive in.
What do you want to know, brother?
I'm all
Start
yours.
start from the beginning and why you wrote this book.
Okay, man. Now, when you say beginning, I mean, so
Back to the
when,
beginning. Give
yeah,
us
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
give
when
us
I was
the
born,
journey.
yeah, man, it was so when I was born, people say, my last name's horrible, everybody made fun of me or whatever. No, I mean there are some other bad last names that I've heard, but listen, man, my last name was spelled loser. So and it's still on my birth certificate to this day. My last name says Loser. It's Loser, Cory Loser. And so my parents say and my grandparents say that it was always pronounced Lozier, but you couldn't tell anybody that. And so the what would happen is first day of school, even early on, kindergarten and first grade, all the way back, I remember I'd go to school and the first thing they do every day and every new year even is they call roll call, man, and to see who's there. And so the first thing starting off right off the rip, roll call happens and they're getting A's, B's, C's, and they get to the L's and I'm slumping in my seat and I'm just, dude, the teacher says Cory Loser, everybody laughs. And and then I'm like, then you have to raise your hand, and then they're like, "Is that really your name?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's pronounced Lozier." But all the kids are laughing already, and it was so that was kind of the start of things, and that was kind of where my earliest childhood memories really are at is dealing with this last name, man, all through what school I actually went to. So that's where it started.
And that's, as I was reading your book, I can't imagine just the what's you ended the book like this. And it's interesting because Stu and I have done some pretty deep dives on just naming in the Bible, like the importance of names from a
Yeah.
biblical perspective. And we dove pretty deep into it as we were looking to looking to change the name of the podcast a year. I don't even know how long ago that was. And as we dove in, man, it's pretty fascinating, not only what God says about names and how he used names, but how especially the ancient Israel, or I'm sorry, the ancient Jews, man, how deep names went. And so you talk about this at the end of the book, but
Yeah.
I remember at the very beginning when you were highlighting just just how kids would react to it and this name, man, that's the first thing that hit me was just like, golly, dude, that's actually it sounds kind of funny, but that's deep. It's deep.
Yeah. It is, and I'm with you on the name thing. It's similar to just the power that's in words, period. I mean, when you start tracking back you break down each word, in the Hebrew or the Greek in the Bible, and each word had one or more meanings, and they were very intentional meanings for every single word, and even letters in other cases. And so, and names are powerful, man. Words are powerful, names are powerful, on earth as it is in heaven, and what we say and what we speak, it matters. And so, and in my case, it was no different. I lived up to the name. Yeah, absolutely lived up to the name.
Yeah, so tell us about that. Tell us about what, where it went from this innocent but shamed kindergartner to where you ended up.
Yeah, so there was a couple factors that played in. It wasn't just the last name. So it was the last name, and I would say that was the biggest part, the worst card that I was dealt to begin with. But also I lived on a little farm in a little farmhouse with well water, and so I also had genetically crooked teeth to begin with, and they were also stained yellow from all the rust in the well water. So I had crooked yellow teeth, and I had the last name Loser, and so. Um, I would go through school and it was like I was living two lives in a way, man, because in my mind and in my heart, like I was, I felt like I could do something, man. Like I could do anything I wanted. I was physically strong. I could, I felt like I was intelligent. I felt, capable, but was never really able to go down in any direction and use and apply those things because I was constantly just bombarded with getting made fun of, and there was these blocks, man, these roadblocks. And so my self-confidence began to go way down, and that pretty much stopped me from doing anything, man. I didn't play sports, and I wanted to, and I would have been good at it, but I didn't want Loser on the back of my jersey, and so of course looking back, I feel like I would have been so famous, dude. Even if I'd have been, good or bad, I could have either been like a winning loser, or the only loser in the Hall of Fame, or or whatever. Or if I was a loser, and I was bad, either way I'd be famous. Well, he lived up to the name again, whatever, but no. So by the end of elementary school, it had taken a toll, man, and I started kind of acting out. And I guess as I look back, I would say that it was acting out and looking for a way kind of to escape from my own skin, man, in the reality that I was dealt. And so what that looked like was early on, even in elementary school, I started doing some things like starting fires in vacant house backyards, like crazy stuff like that, that most kids, or at least I would hope most kids, I hope I was the exception. But playing with fire, literally even, and just doing things I shouldn't have been doing. But then by the end of elementary school, the summer between 12 and 13, that was when I started smoking cigarettes and experimenting with drugs for the first time. So marijuana, and from there on, I think what happened was it grabbed me quickly. That the scene. It wasn't even the drug, man. It was the scene that grabbed me because all of a sudden, when I was hanging out outside of school, right? Always outside of school. When I was hanging out with people outside of school, this drug addict scene, right? Nobody cared and nobody asked. Nobody cared about my last name. Nobody cared about my teeth. Nobody cared. Everybody was just getting high. And so it very quickly, I was attracted to that, man. I was attracted to getting to be in a different world where people didn't know my last name and they didn't know where I came from, and all of that. And it just didn't matter anymore. So that's kind of where everything took a different direction, man. Is right going into junior high and leaving elementary school.
It makes me think as a father, as a parent, like how how to handle this kind of stuff, right? I mean, obviously our my kids don't have the last name Loser, but I mean, bullying and like cliques and making fun of, like, it's all prevalent in any school, right?
Yeah.
And so like, and you have kids, correct?
Yes, yeah, two boys, man, 4 and 7.
So how, for all the parents listening, which is probably like 99% of our listener base, something like this, right? Like how do we attack this thing called bullying? How do we attack and speak into our children about how to handle this stuff and how to react, how to respond? Like what do we do for this? Because it's a problem. It really is.
Yeah, I think You know, I think there's a lot of it really comes down to being intentional. Number one, I think it comes down to acknowledging the fact that hey, this is the things that go on and not forgetting how it was when we were kids, number one, and just acknowledging it in the first place. And then once we've acknowledged it, being intentional to actually take the time and sit down with our kids and say, hey, how's everything going? Is this happening? Have you ever experienced this? Have you experienced that? And find a way to get on our kids' level wherever they're at, meet them where they're at, because every kid's different. You might ask one kid, a question they don't want to answer. You ask another kid, but we all know our kids, and if we don't, we just want to get to know our kids and find out what their personalities are and how they what find a way to for them to let us in, and then be able to talk about it. If we don't even try, it's never going to happen. So at least make the attempt and be intentional. I think is a good start on it. My parents are amazing, man. They love me with all their hearts, and all of my decisions, none of it was their fault, man, but I think there was a lack of and I've already talked to him about this, so it's I can say it, and it obviously mean no harm or anything, because we all do the best we can, and there's no handbook for being a parent, but there was never even a discussion about it, man. Like, my dad and mom never, not one time growing up, did they ever say, hey, now listen, we have this last name, and it might be there's going to be some tough times, there people are going to do this, and this is how you can react, or here's some tools to that you can use in the face of being made fun of or whatever, but there was just nothing, and I don't know, I think there should have been some kind of intentionality with that, and just you know it's out of sight, out of mind. I think everybody gets busy, and we go through the motions, and it's easy just to go to work, come home, get the kids dinner, and just the motions, and forget to be intentional about the real life stuff.
Yeah, man,
Hopefully
that's
that makes sense.
that's no, it makes a lot of sense, and I think there's an aspect to and what you're talking about is also ownership, right? And of course, no judgment on anybody, but a lot of us we say things are super important to us, and we acknowledge. I think we can recognize. I can recognize just with my kids. I mean, I do. My kids are very different human beings, the three of them, and I have to be intentional to speak to each of them where they're at, right? Because if I talk to Maya the way I talk to Jake, or try to bring up, try to deal with her issues the same as I would Jake's, it doesn't even land. It doesn't resonate. They're
Sure.
totally different human beings. But as a daddy, I want to be intentional. As a daddy, I want to be speaking life into them. And it's hard. And I like how you make that point, right? It's hard to be intentional, but if we truly desire to make a difference in this place, I think that we have to be so intentional, know our kid, and be like, okay, Maya, and even like to your point, right? Let's acknowledge the truth. We have this name with my daughter. Like, I just have to look. I have never been a teenage girl. Just it's never happened. Not an experience I've ever had. So let's just start there, and
Thank goodness.
me acknowledge, by the grace of God, me acknowledge, hey, I don't know what you're going through. Like, even starting the conversation that way can open doors, right? Because we're just acknowledging truth. And so I love that. But I don't want to get too far into, so like let's get to the
Yeah.
juicy stuff, dude. Like,
The
let's get
Okay.
to
All
the
juicy
right.
stuff.
meat. Like, let's get to
Yeah.
like what, we're kind of touching around. Oh yeah, I had a rough,
Yeah.
childhood. I got bullied. No, dude, like this story
Yeah.
is not
Okay.
about that.
Yep.
This story is
Yeah.
about a world that to acknowledge it up front as well. I do not know this world.
Okay.
And quite frankly, I think a lot of us, especially, we're both vets, like this is foreign to our lived experience. Um, I think a lot of people probably also don't have compassion around
Gotcha.
this, or they don't have empathy around, you know, well,
Why don't they just quit?
why don't you just quit? Right.
You're hurting
And that's
everybody.
just,
Why are you hurting everybody? Like, why are you
yeah,
stealing
like,
from your parents?
why are you such a
Yeah.
terrible human being? But I'll tell
Yeah.
you where before you start, I'll tell you where I went. I went to some of the struggles that I have, the addictions that I have, right? Even something as simple as spending my life as a football player, and then now still having the mindset weirdly of a football player. My eating consumption is it could be characterized like that's why I was like, man, there's an addiction there. Like, your
Yes.
book is not just about, and I just want to highlight, your book is not just about meth. That
Right.
was your addiction, but there are so many things that all of us work through and struggle with. And until you're serious about it, there's also a level of control specifically for us, Christians in the spiritual. There's a spiritual aspect to this, and it's
100%.
significant, right?
Agreed.
And Stu, like, you're not addicted to ugly. It's just how you're born. I'm just kidding. You're so handsome, and I love you.
I'm proud of it, man. You
The
guys rock it.
Hey
So
man, listen,
Cory,
bald
take us
guys just
deep.
like to make fun of
That's what I'm
guys
talking
with
about,
hair.
dude.
Oh
You know, we,
man.
we just wish we had our hair back.
Hey man, it's no man. It's because
I'm
busy roads don't grow grass, bro. Busy,
oh, there
busy
you
roads
go.
don't grow grass. But go
Uh,
ahead, like
no,
take us
you're good,
deep.
man. No, I appreciate you, pointing out in the book that it's not just about addiction, and it's really not just about the addict either. And I won't stay here very long. But it is. I wrote it with the intention of reaching the parents of addicts, the loved ones of addicts, and to share with and try to express how it was there, so that there can be some empathy and that there can be some level of understanding where the addict is when he's going through what he's going through. So, um, but yeah, you're right, man. There's levels of addiction and everything. Whether it's, I would say something I was thinking when you were talking, you know, for coffee drinkers, something as simple as drinking coffee. Stop drinking coffee, man. Just stop drinking coffee then, right? And then take that and multiply it by 1,000 if you're talking about meth, right? Like it is, you cannot know, and I would never want someone to know the level of pull that meth or heroin or some of the harder drugs have on a person once you're addicted. And so and we can get into that in a little bit farther down the line. But and y'all stop me, I'll start going down with the story and everything, and then y'all just stop me. This is y'all show, and I'm just a part of it, so I want to be on y'all's time frames and in y'all's box. So
Man, so you're
um
going Texas. You're going Texas with the y'alls right there.
well, dude, I've got to represent at
Yeah.
least a little bit. So, the more y'alls I can get in there, it's good. So, so more y'alls, less ums. That's the key. That's the
If you
that's the key to the
if you can fit
podcast.
in a up double chuck barbecue grill into like
If
a
I can even
regular
say it
sentence,
once, like I'll try to fit it in. But so 13, the summer, so 12 years old, the summer between 12 and 13, between sixth and seventh grade, I started smoking weed. And then from there, by the next year at 14, I was snorting cocaine and doing LSD 25. We were dropping acid in sugar cubes. All this was in like the DFW area, so like Arlington, Texas, mostly at that time. And a lot of people are like, "Oh my gosh, how did you get all?" Dude, it was as available as cigarettes. I mean, it was so available. And so it was just as easy to ask for, some marijuana as it was to ask for, acid, LSD, and coke. And so by 14, that ran away for the first time at 14, was staying in a hotel with a drug dealer, and it was very quickly that my parents lost control. There was nothing they could have even done. So I'm going to say that right off the rips. The people are like, well, dude, I would have. No, there was nothing my parents could have done, man. Tell me to stay home. Great. I'm gone. Good luck. So let's just say that right off the rip. But so by 14, coke and acid, and by 15, at 15, it was when I did meth for the first time. And for me, meth there was meth over here, and then there was everything else over here. Nothing else for me anyway compared. So once I did meth for the very first time, I was hooked for life. It was, and I say life for 20 years. um, the I felt like I could do anything, man. For me, it all of my mentally, I felt good, and I felt good physically in the beginning. And I felt like I could accomplish anything, do anything. My motivation went skyrocketed, my ambition skyrocketed. Um, I started looking at it like, dude, everybody else is wasting their life away, sleeping every night, and here I am. I can learn. I'm up 5 and 7 days at a time, and I can learn 5 and 7 times more than these people over here, and just a young dumb kid mentality, completely unaware of where things were going. And so that was at 15, man. And then by 16, I didn't have any of the physical effects yet. I was still holding jobs here and there, not very good jobs, but jobs. And then by 16, I started getting fired from jobs. By the end of 16, I dropped out of school. I did not go to high school. So I was enrolled in high school when I was 16 for, I think, about 30 days. At which point, I basically told my mom I'm not going to school. There was no truancy back then either. I told my mom I'm not going to school anymore. I will go get my GED. And so she, and she tried to convince me to stay and graduate. And I told her, no matter what you do, I'm not doing it. It is all there is to it. So I dropped out of school. She signed me out of school because I was 16. I did keep my word. I went and got my GED within a couple weeks. And then 17 rolls around. So now I'm not in school, and now I'm just doing whatever kind of job I can find while I'm doing meth too. And so then by 17, I got a job at a pharmacy. Um, and yeah, I know, man. And so
Literally a kid in a candy store, like
I
for where you
mean,
were at, like
and the thing
literally.
is, like, what's crazy is I really hadn't experienced any pills at that time. Like, it wasn't really a thing. I was mostly focused on the meth, man. But once I started working in the pharmacy, next thing you know, it's Xanax and hydrocodones and whatever else I could get my hands on. And it was so crazy because they just had this plastic crate that they like a big plastic tub, man, that was sitting on the floor out in the open, and all the stuff that was expired they just throw in there, even like narcotics and stuff. And so I would just grab them, like, I mean, and put them in my I was a pharmacy technician, and I had this white coat, with these big huge, it was like the pockets were made big for just for me.
Just for
I
you.
remember thinking, man, this is great. And so I was just filling them up with pills and taking them to the glove box every break, dude, and every lunch. And I had a relationship with another pharmacy technician there. And then so that lasted about 6 months. And so now you've added pills to the mix. And it never really went too far with the pills, but it was just all part of. So now there's weed, and the coke pretty much was eliminated. But now at this point, now I've experienced a lot of weed, a lot of coke, a lot of meth, a lot of pill, and so it just kept building. But it was always the meth. And so then by 18, so around 18, I met a girl from Oklahoma, and we'll just leave it at that. But I met a girl. I was selling drugs to her dad, meth, and he came, and his daughter came to visit, one summer, and immediately, we hit it off quick, man. And so within just like a matter of weeks or a month or something, I mean, it was quick. We were engaged. I moved in over there, and we were just doing and selling meth. I Her uncle worked at the airline for one of the major airlines, and so he put in a word for me to get an interview. And so I ended up getting an interview, and that I still didn't have this physical. I wasn't losing weight yet. I didn't have you couldn't tell by looking at me yet that I was an addict. Um, and so I got this job, man. And I was trying to do the right thing. And I remember even cleaning up a little bit, man, like for a few weeks, long enough to go through the courses and the training. It was pretty intense training. It was like 12 weeks, 12 hours a day type thing. And so I got this job at the airline, and we got our first apartment. The first thing that was ever in my name, and with this girl, and everything was going good for a few weeks. But meth was on the scene still. And so as meth was on the scene or came back onto the scene, it just I met some new people around that time, and I would consider them to be some of the hardest core people, highly involved. There was some affiliation involved. There was a lot of things involved, and they just had a lot of dope, man. Like a lot of really good, not as far as the drug addict is concerned, really good, high quality dope meth, man. And so it kind of changed the game, man. We spiraled out of control so fast, man. And then I started around that time. I couldn't make it to work. I lost my job at the airline, and from there, dude, I lost the apartment. I lost the girl. Lost everything. And I started shrinking up, man. My weight I ended up getting down. Most of the time when I was strung out, I would hang around 135 to 145. I typically weigh 200 ish, 190 to 200. So you're talking shrunk up. Um, and so, but from that point on, man, and really once I lost that girl, I think that everything I just threw in the towel, man. I realized at that point, I've got a problem. I'm an addict. I don't care. I'm just going to find a way to how can I be the best addict I can be? Like, how can I stay high all the time, numb the pain? I'll just sell as much meth as I can and be this drug dealer and try to just climb this ladder and, be this huge drug dealer and just, you know, uh, live my life that way. Stay high all the time, never work, and just do drugs every day, all night, and be a drug dealer. And that was really, I remember being content and okay with that, man. And the crazy part is it was all a lie, man. I never obtained that. There was never, it's like this carrot on a stick, man. You never get anywhere, and anywhere you do get can be swept out from under you in a heartbeat. The second you get arrested and go to jail or prison, it's all gone anyway. But I started to, it was an up and down type thing, man. So what would happen is, um, I would have enough money to stay somewhere and have a place to stay and eat and survive. And then the next minute, my dealer gets busted or something happens to where, or I spend too much dope or sell too, I make a mistake and I don't have any money now. And now I owe somebody and I can't get any more dope. And now I'm homeless. And now it just went, and I have to steal for what I need. I stole from my parents. Um, and it was up and down, up and down, up and down. And then a few years after that, maybe early 20s, I ran into another crowd, and now I'm cooking meth. And so now it's the spiritual ramifications got worse. It was on again up and down, and it was up and even farther down and up and even farther down. And I, even cooking meth, I never could make it. That I was such an addict that even cook, you think of Breaking Bad and those kinds of things. No, that wasn't me, bro. I was making, a couple few ounces at a time, which, in drug terms is maybe relative, but it's not much, man. You're not Breaking Bad until you've got hundreds of pounds or whatever. I mean, it was nothing, dude. And it was gone. As fast as it came, it was gone. And you know, I lost, and also around that time I started shooting meth, so using needles also. So between cooking meth and shooting meth, um, my world kind of spun. I reached new lows that I never thought I would, man. My every inhibition was removed one by one. All of my ability to say no was gone. No matter what it took, my boundaries were gone. No matter who I had to steal from, no matter what I had to do to stay high, I did it, man. Including, it got so bad that, and I wanted to quit, man. It wasn't that I didn't want to quit, bro. Like, by this time, I hated what I was doing and I hated myself, but I couldn't quit. I would take my needles and throw them in a ditch somewhere, driving down the road, and then want to get high, a few hours later and go back and get them and use them again. Or if I couldn't get needles when I needed them, I would borrow needles from people, even if I didn't know them, even if they were used, and I even knew a guy that officially had been diagnosed with AIDS, and I would share his needles when I didn't have one, knowing that I'm putting potentially AIDS into my body, dude. That's how bad it got. I even on Christmas Eve, I had lost my family by then. Everybody I knew, had turned away, and so there was a one particular instance where my parents went out of town. I wasn't even allowed on their property. They told all the neighbors if I was seen anywhere near there, call the police. Then that actually did happen multiple times, and he got removed from the property by the police. So that's where I was with my parents. But they went out of town on Christmas, man, and on Christmas Eve I broke into their house to cook meth and burn their kitchen down, dude, on Christmas Eve. And then they came home and of course were devastated. And it was, so that those I share those things to kind of try to create a picture of kind of just how bad, how bad it was. And then add the timeline, man, because we're talking 20 years, So 13 to 33 was my addiction, how long it lasted. And I want to bring God into this. 10 years in. So about and I want to say this too, man. My timelines, I try to make sure that I'm in sync with when things were happening. But dude, I was a meth addict. I was up 5 days, down a day. I have no idea. And so I do my best on timelines. So try not to hold me to that. But I remember even the guy that taught me to cook dope one time, man, I was in his house in the middle of the night, running around. We'd been up some days and I was doing my normal thing and high and all of that. And I'm running around and he just kind of stops me and grabs my shoulders and looks at me and he says, "Hey man, what day is it?" And I was like, "Man, dude, I don't know, man. I don't know what day it is, bro." And he's like, and he looked at me and said, "Hey, what month is it?" And I was like, "Dude, I don't know, man. I don't know what month it is, bro." And then he stopped and he got super serious and he said, "What year is it?" And I stopped, man. I remember stopping in my tracks and I stopped smiling and I was thinking as hard as I could, dude. I was just, dude, I could not believe I didn't know what year it was, man. And it wasn't because I was so high I didn't know what year it was. It wasn't that. I was comprehensive, dude. Or is that the right word? It wasn't that. It was that I had been doing what I was doing and only doing what I was doing for so long I had no reason to know what year it was, and I didn't know. I did not know what year it was, man. And so he told me, "Dude, you need to go to sleep. You need to get some rest, and you need to figure something out, and do something." And so anyway, when your drug buddy tells you that, but so that's when I say I don't know timelines, dude. I don't know, man. I don't even know what year almost anything happened during that 20-year phase. Um, but so I say that to say that I think somewhere along the 10-year mark, um, I was homeless and it was pouring down rain. I had no money, nowhere to go. I was walking down the street in my mom's neighborhood, and I wasn't even allowed to be there. And I remember walking up to the door, and dude, I had given up, man. I tried rehabs, 30-day, 60-day, 90, all the rehabs, nothing was working. And so I went to my mom's house and I knocked on the door. And of course, every time she saw me, man, it was so horrible. I'll never forget the looks on her face, man. Because she would see me, and instead of being able to be happy to see her son, it was this look of like utter despair, man. Every time she would see me, I'd immediately see her tear up, man. And she would try to hide it, man, but there was no hiding it, man. And so I told her, "Mom, I've tried everything. I don't know what to do. I'm willing to try God at this point." And until then, there had been no God in my life. There had been no, you know, I thought Christians were tree huggers. I thought less of people who were, following Jesus. It looked ridiculous to me. Um, but I was willing to do anything because nothing else had worked. And so I told her, "Look, man, if I come here, Mom, on Sunday, if I just meet you here in the morning, can you take me to a church? I don't care where it is, just take me to a church." And so, long story short, she did, man. I went back. She took me to a church. They sent a couple there. Like, God is so good. Um, he is sending people our way, even in the worst of our worst situation, even when we're messing up every minute of every day. Like, he will send somebody to take care of us and bless us, and just he's sending us solutions all the time because he loves us so much, even before we're saved. And so I went to this church. There's only like 30 people in the church, and there was a couple there that immediately, and dude, I looked like death, man. I mean, I looked strung out. It was bad. Um, and they took a liking to me and they offered immediately to take me out to their property, let me clean up for a couple weeks and feed me and just let me sleep and just let me get clean. And then they paid for and sent me to this 3-day program. And in that program, I didn't know it was Christian based, but it was. And in that program, I ended up getting saved. And so, like, radically saved. And so on the third day in that program, no, the second day of that program, we went downstairs. It took place in a hotel in Dallas, and it was probably 100 of us maybe, and there was girls on one side of the hotel and rooms with girls, and guys on the other side of the hotel and rooms with a roommate with it's a guy. We would meet down on the bottom floor in one of these conference rooms, and we would do these, like, there was different sessions or whatever. And I don't want to go into all the detail or anything, but there was a session taking place, and we had these facilitators, and there was this guy he was like, it was like he was trying to break me down, man. And so he was holding my shoulders and he's like, "Cory, do you want free? Do you want free of this addiction?" Like, and I mean, I'd only been clean a week, dude. I still look like death. And I've been struggling for 10 years at this point. He's like, "Do you want to be free?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I want to be free." And he just kept saying it like over and over and over. "Do you want to be free?" Like, "I don't hear you. Do you want to be free?" And finally, like, I was like, "Yes." Like, and I screamed, like, and he's like, I'm literally physically struggling with him. I'm like mad at him, dude. Like, I'm literally trying to get his arms off of me and he won't let go, man. And I'm like, Yes, yes, yes. I want to be free. Like, yes. What are you doing? Like, what's wrong? Yes. And he's like, then get down on your face and ask Jesus to come into your heart. And so, dude, I'm in tears, man. And I drop to the floor. I get on my face, man, and I am screaming, Jesus, please come into my life, dude. Change my life. Come into my life. Save me. I can't do this. Right. And I'm screaming out, Jesus, help me, please, in front of everybody. And so I get up and I'm crying. And for the first time in all those years, I felt some relief. I felt some peace. I was smiling for the first time in I don't know how long, man. I knew that I hadn't smiled in a long time because the muscles I was using to smile felt I could tell I hadn't used those muscles in a long time, man. And so that's how long it had been since I'd even smiled. And so I get radically saved. And when I stood up crying, all of that anger was gone, all of everything was gone. And he looked at me and he had this white towel in his hand and he was waving the white towel in my face, man. And he said, listen, this is where your sin, this is where your addiction is going to be the rest of your life, man, right here in your face, like this. And so I heard what he said. The session ended. I had noticed that my roommate hadn't showed up to that session. So within 5 minutes, I walked up from that happening, getting saved and all that towel. I walked upstairs and took the elevator up to my room, went to my room, opened the door, and clouds of meth smoke came pouring out of my room, dude. That fast, man. Within 5 minutes of getting saved and asking Jesus into my heart, that fast at the place that was intended for me to get saved and be safe and all that, the meth smoke comes pouring out. There's a whole room full of people. My roommate was in there basically partying and had a bunch of meth, dude. And so for the first time in my life, I shut the door and I turned around and walked away. And so it was the first time I ever said no to meth. And I thought to myself, like, I was feeling pretty good, man. I felt like, dude, I'm never going to do meth again. I'm never going to sin again. I'm going to find out who Jesus is. I'm going to, right? Like, I got this. And so my mom picked me up from there. She actually came and picked me up and they let me move back in. She took one look at me and saw me smiling and started crying. I went back to the house and with these amazing plans. And 2 weeks later, I was shooting meth again. And what I want to say is that, you know, I know when people say, I know that I know that I know that I got saved. I know that I know that I know that something changed. And the way that I know that is because from that day forward, anytime I would sin or do meth or whatever other sin, I felt conviction. I hated it, dude. It was miserable. I knew something changed in my heart because I was sensitive to doing wrong. No more did I want to do wrong. And I was still a meth addict. And so for 10 more years, I couldn't quit, man. And I was the latter 10 years was way more miserable than the first 10 years because now I'm saved and doing it. And so it was, man, it was downhill. It was horrible, man. And it was never easy again. It was never fun again. And it was never easy again. To get high did not come easy ever again once I got saved. It was almost like, I don't even know how to say it, but I had these. It was like there was obstacles. No longer was I easily able to obtain drugs and get high, and so it was a bad 10 years, man. It was when I ended up being homeless, in the woods, living in the woods in the dead of winter, man. I mean, under bridges and in bleachers at schools. I mean, it took a toll. I could never get back up on my game again. I couldn't get anywhere, man, for 10 more years. So that's kind of the short-ish version of fitting 20 years into just a few minutes. But and so that was the downfall, and that was where man, Satan, our enemy, man, got a hold of me and took me down as far as he could get me, as close to death as he could get me, man. On many occasions I should have been dead, man, and I know that God was protecting me or I would be dead, man.
So as I was reading your book, I was, again, I go straight to like me as a father
Sure.
and what I would do, how I would handle the situation if I was in the seat of your dad. And interestingly, my wife had like sent me some Instagram reel of this guy. He's kind of like a success guru, personal development guy. And the reel was about him saying that if his kids ever got involved in the bad crowd like that, he would do anything and everything to get his kids away from it, to the point of like moving, changing jobs, going to a different country, anything, because it's like in Israel, he was like, it's the most important thing that you can do as a parent is to not let your kids get involved with the bad crowd. And I was thinking through that, and I'm curious, like there's this balance of like, yeah, let your kids learn lessons, let your kids have hard times, do hard things, get challenged, get pushed around, come through, face adversity. But then there's like this other one of like, no, you want to protect your kid, right? You don't want to let them, go to the bad school where there's a bunch of bullies, right? So I'm curious where you're at with this. Like,
Sure.
as a parent, like, what do you do to make like, I guess, protect your kid or let your
Yeah.
kid learn the lessons? Do
Uh,
you move if you find out your kid is doing drugs with the bad crowd? Like, what do you do?
Man, there's so many variables. But I'll say this. I think hands down the single most important thing. I'll use a a, a a parallel here. So when people get hired on at a bank and they're taught to be able to identify counterfeit money, they don't get taught to identify counterfeit money by handling a bunch of counterfeit money. They get taught to identify counterfeit money by handling real money all the time. All the time. You're counting money and touching money, and you've got your hands on real money. And so then when the counterfeit comes along, you immediately feel the difference, and you know the difference because you've been taught the right way. So what I would say is that our best our best is never good enough. Uh, our best shot is to bring God into the mix and give that child as much experience and as much interaction with God and what God says as you possibly can. And so that they train them up and bring them up in the truth so that when they see a lie, they can identify it. Have them around and involved in and in truth and what's real and what's right as much as you possibly can so that it stands out. Anything wrong stands out. And so that's the first thing. And then as far as, the variables are, okay, so let's say you do that and they get in the wrong crowd, you know, where would you move where there's not a wrong crowd? There's a wrong crowd
Yep.
anywhere.
Yep.
Maybe it would work. Maybe you could get them out in time and they won't go down that road and make that choice again. And so those are variables how far off is your kid? How far down is he? Because where I was, doesn't matter where I went. I tried that. I moved to Oklahoma. I moved to New Mexico. I tried the moving somewhere else, and that didn't work, man. I just found the same people there, And so I think it really goes back to just teaching them the right ways so that they don't stray when they're older, man. It's a God thing, man,
So good.
and a lot of it's in God's hands. So
Yeah,
that would be my best
that's a great
answer.
answer, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and I love I love that last question you asked. Where are there no wrong crowds? Like you're gonna find it. That's
It's
not
everywhere.
running is not the answer because it rarely works, right? It rarely
Yeah,
works.
agreed.
So how do you so let's I mean I could go another 2 hours on this because this
I
is
already know.
it was fascinating and I
Yeah,
mean your book was man, it was a page turner. I picked it up and I didn't put it down until I was done.
I
But
appreciate you saying that, man.
I'm how did this all resolve? Like,
Yeah,
you're in there, you're in the darkness for 20 years,
yeah,
losing track of years at a time. And
man.
obviously that's not where we're at today.
Yeah, sure. Um, so if there's for the whole 20 years, I went out of my way to, if there's a such thing, be smart about selling drugs and being a drug addict. And dude, like example would be, most everybody I knew that went to jail all the time, would go pick up dope and just have it laying in their lap or in the console, wide open, and then drive down the road, and then they get pulled over and there's nowhere they can put it. It's like right there. And so I had special compartments that, would attach to the bottom of my car or in my motor. There was hollowed out bolts, that were half dollar size and this long that hold down those big highway light poles, and cut them in half and hollow out both ends, and then the nut is so wide that you can put the two hollow halves back together and hold them together by the nut, and just throw it back in the back of the bed of the truck with a bunch of other loose bolts and parts. And there was just a lot of things that I did that, to try not to get caught, and then the other part of it is when I did, a lot of sometimes I had my own vehicle, sometimes I didn't. But dude, I did a lot of running on foot too. I ran into sewer tunnels. I would go straight for the sewer, man, because once I went in those tunnels, they stopped following me, man. And then I would just come up. Yeah, I'd go miles sometimes, man, and come up 2 miles over in another neighborhood and make a phone call and have somebody come get me, that kind of stuff. Um, and I was paranoid, so people that I knew for years, I would be paranoid of them. Always somebody's going to snitch on me. Somebody set me up, and so they'd call me and we set up a meeting place for me to drop something off to them. And I'd call them, 5 minutes before and be like, nope, now I'm over here, drive over here, like 5 times, change it up, just so that the chances of being set up, uh, actually working would be much harder, that type of thing, if that would even affect it. But in my paranoid mind, I would do all these things. But um, I started slipping later on, man. So on year 18, I got caught with meth for the first time. So I've been a drug addict for 18 years and never got caught with meth. So at 18 and selling meth the majority of that time. At 18, I got caught with, I think it was like 7 or 8 grams or something, man, enough to at least get a charge, right? And so I was driving, it was in my car, and I got caught with it, man. So I get caught. I'd never been caught before, so it was a slap on the hand, dude. First charge ever. So they give me probation. I get out of jail a few weeks later, and I'm still a drug addict. So I go right back to what I was doing and didn't go to probation. And so then a blue warrant went out, and I ran and stayed, on the run for a year and a half. And then on year 20, this girl was driving me around, and I had just picked up, and I was dropping some stuff off along the way on my way home, and North Richland Hills, got pulled over. The cop got behind us, and he didn't turn on his lights immediately. He was just following behind us for a while, and so I knew, man, I knew we were going to get pulled over. And I told the girl, I was like, look, I'm going to run. Like, pull over in this gas station up here at this intersection, and there was a sewer, a caddy corner to where I told her to pull. I already knew. I had this plan. I had a big black bag of meth, and I had my scales in there and everything. And so as soon as she stopped the car, I jumped out and started running. But he had been behind us for long enough to call back up, and this whole thing, he was already preparing, he knew. And so when I jumped out, it was dark outside, but there was cops. It was a four-way stop, and there was cops coming from every direction, man. I mean, they were everywhere, dude. So I jumped out and I'm running, and but they tackled me, and they got me, and I went to prison. I knew I was going to prison. And the crazy part about it is, man, everybody's like, oh, I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to, dude. I knew I was going to go to prison if I got caught again. I knew it was coming. I knew it wasn't if, it was when, and I was kind of looking forward to it because I hadn't been wanted to do what I was doing for 10 years. I just kept doing it because I'm a drug addict and I couldn't quit doing meth. Um, and so when they put me in the back of the cop car and closed the door, man, I remember just leaning my head back on the back of the seat, and just going, like, this sigh of relief, man. I was so relieved because I knew I was going to go eat and sleep and get and feel good, man. I knew I was no longer going to be doing meth. And I also knew that once that happened and I got significant clean time, I would never go back, man. I knew I could never go back, not even once. And so, as soon as I went to jail, I mean, I slept for a few weeks or months. um, and got clean. But I immediately started eating. I immediately started working out. I immediately started getting physically healthy and spiritually healthy. I got in the Word of God. My relationship with God developed, and I got closer to God than ever before. I started leading Bible studies. God blessed me even in prison. And so my time there, I mean, it was prison, so obviously it wasn't great. And there was, a lot of the things you hear about, fights and people getting killed and that kind of thing. That stuff happens. But it also, I was getting close to God and building a relationship with Jesus, and helping others. Even started to lead the Bible studies and praise and worship. I even got on a praise and worship team where I was able to play guitar. And God just showed up, man, for me while I was in prison, and He blessed me tremendously. And it was best case scenario. even with being in prison, it was best case scenario all the way through, man. And so then what the day I was getting out, God started speaking to me and telling me, there was some people that had prophesied over me and spoke words over me that I was gonna, touch millions and all these crazy things, and I'm like, dude, I just kind of wrote everything off, man. And because how is that possible? I'm this drug addict, who's been a meth addict for 20 years, what do you, I have nothing. I have no college. I have no school. I didn't even go to high school. Like, who am I, And so, but people would say things like that and pray things like that, and that I'm going to reach all these people and things, and I just never gave it a whole lot of thought, man. It was in the back of my mind and I remembered it, but I didn't give it a whole lot of thought. And so I got out of prison, and the day I was getting out, I was sitting on a floor, and in a group of however many people were getting out, 50 or so people or whatever it was. And I remember listening to the conversations, and I was just quiet, man. And everybody was, there's these guys, man, they've been in there 10 and 15 and 20 years, and the conversations were, when I get out, I'm about to get high, my girl's on the way to pick me up, we've already re-upped, we've already got this and that. And I'm just like, and I was in shock, man, that these guys had been like, what did you learn? And what did you do with your time? Right? Like, you are the same person that you were when you went in, if not worse. And now you're coming out and you're going to go do the, and I remember getting this vision of like a herd of cattle walking off a cliff, man. Um, and so from that day on, that vision stuck with me. And from that day on, that became my purpose in ministry. I knew that I was going to go into ministry. I didn't know how and I didn't know when, but I knew that someday I was going to go into ministry, and my sole purpose would be to reach addicts, addicts, current addicts, addicts who are in prison, getting ready to get out before they go back to what they were, and to provide hope for them in some form or fashion. I just didn't know any more than that. But when I got out, um, you've got all these cliches, once a felon, always a felon, once an addict, always an addict, once a felon, you're never going to be successful. You're a felon, nobody's going to hire you, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so I got it. And there was some truth to that, man. Like, I got out and the jobs were less, and I already didn't had, a bad, I already had less opportunity because I didn't know how to do anything. Um, and so I got out and I started, working for like $10 an hour, driving a forklift. And what happened was, a few weeks in, and I met my, there's so much, I know we're supposed to keep this in time, but I don't even know how to say it without saying it. Um, so you may have to do 2 episodes. I don't know. Or shut me up when you want me to. So I had been working for a matter of weeks or a couple months at driving a forklift. I was living in a halfway house. Um, and along that way, I had gotten engaged. I was on Christian Mingle, and I had on this, and you might, I don't know if you go edit that out. I was on a Christian dating site, and met my current wife. And so we hit it off really quickly. She came over, and actually picked me up from the halfway house, and we went on our first date. I didn't even have a vehicle yet, and it was good, man. But I was working for a few weeks or a couple months or something at this place, and God, I had gotten engaged to my current wife, and God told me, I felt this download, like I'm supposed to quit my job, um, and start a lawn business. And so I called my fiance, my current fiance at the time, and I said, her name's Christina. And I said, hey, Christina, I said, I feel like God is telling me to quit my job, and go start a lawn business. And now this was in February of 2016. So February, there's not really much grass even growing. And so, February 2016, whatever day that was, she said, I told her that. And the first thing she said was, oh, have you prayed about that? And so, I said, let me call you right back. So I hung up the phone. I went to a corner of the warehouse, that I was working in, and I went to pray, man. And I started to say, God, and before I could even get it out, man, I heard yes. And so I called her back and I said, I know for sure I'm supposed to quit and start a lawn business. So she's like, okay, whatever. So hung up the phone, went and, told my boss, I have to quit, blah, blah, blah. And on the way home, I found a weed eater and a blower on the side of the road that somebody was getting rid of that worked. It was working equipment, um, on the way home. And so, I got home, and within a few days, someone else had blessed me with a mower, a push mower. Now, none of this equipment was very good, but it was something. And so, my dad had actually, for the first time in 20 years, helped me with a vehicle. It wasn't much, but it was a truck. And so now I've got a truck, a mower, a weed eater, and a blower. And so, man, I put it in the back of my truck and I started going out every day. And I would knock on doors 8 to 10 hours a day. And if they answered, great, I'd talk them into letting me mow. And if they didn't, I'd leave a handwritten note, say, I'll mow your yard for 20 bucks. And, it was a little tough the first few weeks. I remember Christina would call me and she would say, how's it going? And I dreaded those calls, man. She'd be like, how's it going? And I'd be like, well, I've got, 21 no's, one yes and one maybe, but all this or whatever, it just wasn't super great. But I want to say this real quick about starting a business. Um, people that don't own a business or have never had a business, they look at business owners or they think in their mind for some reason that business owners are just sitting around somewhere with their feet propped up on a desk waiting for checks to come in the mail, and they already knew they had some skill, or they already came from money,
Well, it's
or
easy, right? It's
yeah,
easy.
it's easy. It's
Easy
easy.
money.
But listen, if you I put into starting a business as much effort as I put into staying high. I put everything into it and I did everything I needed to do to make it happen. And if something didn't work, I did something different. And if I needed to stay out there an extra couple hours, I did it. It didn't matter what it took, I did it and I didn't stop. And so with that said, the first year, I made more money than I'd ever made in my life. Um, and by the end of the second year ish, Christina was able to resign from her job on her birthday and come full time into our business. And so she came on board. And then every year, our revenue doubled for like the first 5 years. Our revenue doubled every year. And just, dude, off the charts, like out the window, man. And so, um, God blessed us tremendously in this business. So now I get out of prison. And so for the first, we're going to call it 8 years, all that was happening is I was building a business and building a family. So I got married, I got out of prison, got married, got pregnant and had kids and started a business all the first year. And so all of that took place immediately. And so then now I'm off to the races. Like now I've got now I've got a marriage, I've got kids, I've got a business. Like, so now the focus for 8 years was build a family, build a business, build a marriage, build, right? And so that's what took place for the first 8 years. And then sometime in year eight-ish, this last year, a year ago, maybe year seven, a year and a half ago, I don't know. I told you all about timelines. A year and a half ago or so from now, God put it on my heart. We started getting in a place where we're a little bit more able to. Had a little more freedom. I don't do the physical work anymore. I'm more of a more sales and customer relations and that kind of thing. So I drive around a lot. And so my time, I have a flexibility in my schedule. And so God put it on my heart to write a book. And I'm like, God, what do you mean write a book? Like, how am I going to write a book? Like, I run a business. Like, I'm married. I've got small kids. Like, when am I going to find time to do anything? Right. And so, I'm going to say this too, man, for anybody out there who has ever thought about writing a book, dude, don't be deterred by what you see in the movies. Like in the movies, like they present this image of, when you think of author and somebody writing a book, you think of them going far away up into the mountains, and they've got 6 months to a year to just live in the mountains in this cabin with the fire going and perfect circumstances, and they're just on this typewriter and they're just typing away and they've just got all the time, right? Dude, that's not how it was for me. I mean, I don't know, maybe some authors, but no. So you want to write a book, you're never going to finish if you don't start. Number one, you won't, no matter what it is in life, you'll never finish if you don't start. And then, for me to write the book, the first thing I had to do is come up with, what am I writing about? Right. And so my last name was Loser, right? And so I thought, okay, well, I was born a loser. Right. And then let me say this, let me circle back real fast. So when I got out of prison, I immediately went to a judge, once I met Christina, and we realized, okay, we're going to get married. There's going to be some kids involved and, all that. I'm going to start a family. I did not want my kids or my wife to go through what I went through with that last name. So I went to a judge as a felon, just got out of prison, and hoped and prayed that he would change my last name. And so I went to the judge. Christina went with me, and we presented the paperwork. And I basically told the judge, I was like, look, man, I'm not trying to run. I'm not trying to hide. But can you please just add an I to my name between, and he looked at the paperwork and he was like, Yes. And so I was like, yes. So anyway, so my last name changed or whatever. But anyway, Born a Loser was the title that I feel like God gave me. And so to write the book, man, I'd be driving somewhere in the Metroplex, on my way to do my normal thing, and I would get an idea about something I would want to write about. I'd pull off the road, sit in a parking lot for 10 or 15 minutes, write down the idea and a couple things about it, and then go on about my day. Then the next day, if I got another idea, I do the same thing, and so on and so on. And about a year and a half later, I had what happened was over time I started having, I ended up with about 29 or 30 ideas, that subjects I wanted to write about. And then I started filling in what writing about those subjects. And so the subjects became the chapters, and then what I wrote about them became the body of the book. And then God sent a publisher. So a year and a half or so, all the information and all the word count came together. And then God sent us just by happenstance, right at the time I was finishing, God sent us an amazing Christian publisher. Her name is Jennifer Weiss. It's Dove Publishing, so we'll just throw that out there. She was amazing from beginning to end, and honestly, the cover idea that we had was not this. She ended up coming up with this cover, and so it was meant to be, man. It was 100%. This is better than what we had thought. But so God made it happen. But so then fast forward to now. So I ended up getting the book published a few months ago. And once the book was published, and then one more quick story I want to share too along the way, because it all plays in together. I was afraid to speak in front of people. So God's given me this amazing, crazy testimony to get glory, right? The whole reason he did everything he's ever done for me, he did to get glory, right? God takes the foolish things of the world, the weak things of the world, the things that are not, and the things that are despised, to bring to nothing the things that are, so that no one can boast before him, right? So that he takes something way down here that the guy that everybody thinks going to be dead in a ditch, right? He takes this guy and raises him up over here, not for me, not for the guy, but so that he can get glory. Because when people look at that person, they say, there's no way that dude could be where he is from where he was that fast unless God did it. There's no other way, no explanation, right? So God gets glory from the story. But I feel like I lost my train of thought completely, y'all. The I think at the end of the day, I think that God did everything he did for me to get glory, man. And oh, it was the speaking. I was afraid to speak in front of people. And so around the time, not too long before I ended up finishing the book, like I had talked to my wife and I was like, Christine, I know that I'm supposed to give my testimony in front of people, and I just don't know that I can do that. Like, I'm scared to speak in front of people. And I said, if God will fix my teeth, I will speak in front of people. And so the time came, man, that I had a choice. I could either get a brand new truck or fix my teeth. And so I chose my teeth. And so what happened was, so I don't have any real teeth. So anybody out there that's like, that dude was never a meth addict. He wasn't doing meth for 20. No, no, I was. Half my teeth were gone, and it was bad. And so I don't have any real teeth. So I got all the implants, and God, hooked me up, dude. And so right after I got all these new teeth, man, and the book got published, those two things, immediately people just come out of the woodwork, man. And there's, come on my podcast, come speak at my church, come speak for the city of Rockwall, come, do all these things. And so it's just, God has done something in my life that is miraculous, that I could never have done myself. My wife and I sit back and are amazed all the time, and then re-amazed at what God's doing, on every level. And so all I am, man, is just this regular guy who was just a freaking crazy drug addict who sinned in every way, stole from everybody, lied, and have been to the bottom of every hole. Just this normal guy who had some real struggles for a big portion of his life, who God took and wants to use to now go back and give hope to other addicts who don't think they can get out, man. Because that's the problem. The problem is addicts don't think they can get out. People like me, where I never saw anybody get out. I didn't know anybody who had gotten out long term. And on top, and not only did not get out, but get out and be successful and live more than just a barely making it life. Like, dude, I didn't know there was any hope. Everybody I knew that did it died doing it, there was no hope. And so that's kind of what God gave me, is this, he didn't do it for me, maybe me too, but he did it for me. And so that, we can go back and give hope to other people that don't have it. The guys that are still in rehab, the guys that are in prison, the guys who are still in addiction, the parents who have given up, who don't think their son or daughter can make it, right? Like there's a way out. Like God is good, and there is absolutely nothing impossible for God. It doesn't matter how long, how many years, how far down. God can rescue anyone from any mess they're in, because if he can do it for me, he can do it for anybody.
Dude, such an amazing story. It's
Appreciate it, man.
incredible.
Yeah,
Uh, we had another guest on our podcast, Robin Pugh. He's also from Texas, from Dallas, and he wrote, we are all either going into a ditch, or in the ditch, or coming out of the ditch, and it's all for His glory.
it's all for
And
his glory, man.
just real fast, explain
Yeah.
Ditch to Destiny.
Okay. So it's new. It's so Ditch to Destiny is a few things. So it is our ministry. It's officially our ministry. Also, we just created that within the last few months. It is also going to be the name of my podcast, which will be starting hopefully by the end of the year.
Nice.
Yes, yes. And so finally, after a lot of work and a lot of patience from my wife, it was, who'd have thought how time consuming it would be to get all the equipment, to get everything set up, and to get right logos. And so it is the official name of our ministry, and also it will be the official name of my podcast, that we'll be getting started real soon. But it's what we sell the book through Ditch to Destiny. So it is at the moment, it's not nonprofit. It is a for profit. And then we're going to branch off of that and have another nonprofit attached to that, to where we can do like donations and things like that towards helping with addiction. But at the moment, that's where we're at. And so it's a lot of work getting it together, and we're already running a business. So it's been as we can get it together. But, and so, yeah, I mean, it's what's going to help us to continue to go to prisons and speak, life into these guys, and to churches all over, and all the different things that we're doing. It's going to help with that. And so, but yeah, Ditch to Destiny. The first series is going to be called Surviving the Aftermath. Yeah.
Nice. I
Nice.
like it.
I think so. I
I
mean,
like
goofy,
it.
maybe goofy, but
Oh,
I
that's
like it.
good.
So,
That's
yeah, so
good.
it'll just basically be, who's Cory Losier, where did you come from? Why do we want to listen to you in the first place? Why, who are you? Why do you have any say in anything? What do you have to say? Where did you come from? So that kind of thing. And then, once that's set, then I've got, I'll start bringing on some guests, and I've got some, hopefully, what I think is a pretty amazing lineup of guys to come on, and hopefully speak into that as well. But yeah, man, it's been good. So yeah,
That's incredible, man. I love it, dude. I also want to, you touched on a lot of the book, but there's also at the end, you talked about it's also not all, unicorns and rainbows and roses.
sure.
There's aspects of the long-term effects that meth, just how it just rewired your brain. And so I want to encourage all our listeners to go get the book and be encouraged by the fact that, yeah, you came out of a significant struggle, and there were other things to resolve, right? Your marriage was not, I think you said the first 6 years were some of the hardest years of your life as well. And just the continued growth and God's provision and his grace, and your humility to write this book and share it, and to bring hope, as you highlighted, this is not just for addicts, although I would argue that most of us probably can find something that we're addicted to, that's not bringing glory to God. But it doesn't have to be meth to be damaging, but it also doesn't have to be meth to be glorifying and edifying to God, as He helps you through those things. But also to family members, and to those that, loved ones that struggle with whatever the addiction is. So, man, what a powerful book! What a powerful testimony! Uh, Glory be to God! It's just
Yeah.
incredible, incredible. That you've and I thank God that He brought you provision to fix the teeth, and whatever was needed to get you on stage, and to get you out there to talk about this book, to get on podcast, to start your own podcast. What an incredible thing, man. So I am beyond grateful for you, and just absolutely praising God for this story. It's incredible.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share it, and just as an encouragement to family members, of addicts. If you've got somebody that's an addict, son, daughter, wife, whatever, just never give up on them. Don't ever give up. They love you. They are still there. Their heart is still intact, no matter what they're doing. Whatever they're doing that's wrong, they don't want to be. It doesn't matter how long you might think, oh, they never quit. Why don't they just quit? How could they do this to me? Dude, it doesn't mean that they don't have to suffer the consequences, but I promise you, they still love you and they're still there and they need your love. They don't need enablement, but they do need you to love them and they need to know that you love them. And so just don't give up and don't lose hope, because it might take it. You never know how long it's going to take, but it's possible. So
Cory, where do we send people to go find out more about you, your book? Where do they get the book and
sure.
about Dish to Destiny?
Yeah, so it's super simple. I mean, it's on Amazon, man. Type in on Amazon "Born a Loser" book, and it'll come right up. You can go onto our Facebook page, which is Dish to Destiny Facebook page, and there's more details on there about how you can get it. But I mean, simple as buying something on Amazon.
Cool.
So
We'll put
yeah,
a link in the show notes for that.
thanks.
Like David said, this was amazing book, amazing story. Thank you for coming on and sharing it.
Yeah,
Hey guys and gals, reach out to Cory. Go get the book. Go read it. It was awesome. Cory, thank you, sir.
cool, man.
See you.
See you.